Hi, everybody. I'm meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Let's go through the overnight runs of the GFS because they're hilarious, and we'll look at the European as well. When I say hilarious, it's just that sometimes the schizophrenic nature of some of the things that go on from run to run are you can just laugh at them. That's really all you can do. So let's set the upper air in motion, and you're going to see the problem. What I'm looking at now is the mid-run that comes out at around 4:30 in the morning, and you're going to see something a little different here when we get through it. Now, here's our weekend. There's no real issue here. We have the weather front that's going to sink southward here Monday night. Looks like a wave is going to go to our south Sunday night into Monday morning with some precip. European's a little colder, so I might argue for a stripe of snow maybe across northeastern Pennsylvania and maybe even into northwest New Jersey, the northern parts of the Hudson Valley, say north of Route 84, and then north of Route 84 in Connecticut. Not much, just some light, maybe some wet snow. Could be a little stripe of a coating to a couple of inches. Cheap thrill situation. Now, as we move now into the middle of next week, and this mid-run model just really changed completely. And actually, it didn't really so much change completely in that it just is timing everything in the two jet streams differently. A faster northern stream that moves across into eastern Canada leaves that southern system behind, and you can barely find it here. It just goes out to our south, and I'm talking way to our south, because you have this other system that's now kicking up into the plain. So when you have a lot of energy running around, timing is critical. If things don't time out correctly, you're going to have all sorts of different outcomes, as we've noted. Now, this is different from the night run, which I'm going to go back to from the first run that came out at beginning at 10:30 last night. And this is a different look. So you can see here, this is what it has for Wednesday afternoon on the night run, and then the one that came out at 4:30 has that. So you go from this, which is somewhat dynamic, to that. Okay, now how does this translate on the surface? Well, I'll switch over, and you can see here, now this was the run from overnight. By the way, the surface law on the overnight run was further east on that run, and also not showing as much cold air, to show some cold air, but it's not as dynamic, so it's going to be warmer. And this is the run. I'm sorry, this is, let me see, I want to make sure I got the right ones because I'm switching back and forth so fast I'm losing track. Okay, so this is the new run now, which takes the low much further east, okay, and takes it southeast of Cape Cod. We barely get into precip here for Wednesday into Wednesday night. The old run, on the other hand, took a low pretty much on the east side of the Appalachians and passes it just to our west. Not too different from what we just saw a couple of days ago. And then it runs out to the northeast. So that is the GFS solution, or solutions. I'll just show you that in terms of what the ensembles are doing with this. And, you know, for those of you, are not familiar, ensembles are basically the model that had the same model, the GFS ensembles, as the Canadian ensembles, the European ensembles. It's the model, and there's all sorts of different variations into what kind of data goes into it, how much data is going into it. So you wind up with different outcomes. The idea being that the models will react differently to given certain conditions. And when you average them all out, there's maybe 20 or 30, however many members there are. This is the average position of all the members, and this is running a low actually just offshore on the GFS ensemble, and that is the GFS-based ensembles. The European ensemble, and the European is decidedly more dynamic. It continues to be pretty consistent, so now we're just sort of playing games with how far left, how far right. But you can see it's got a pretty decent low the average along the North Carolina coast, and it takes it into the Gulf of Maine. This is probably a colder track, so it would favor, a rain to a mix of snow along the coast and more snow inland. Now, the operational European is deeper, so we'll go take a look at that now. And I'll switch over, and you can see on this one that this has a fairly deep low that moves right over southernmost New Jersey, and it's a coast hugger on the European operational run, and then runs to the northeast. But in terms of depth and consistency from run to run, this model has been pretty much the same. It hasn't really varied in terms of the wild swings that you see on the GFS model. And when we look at the upper air, you can see how much more dynamic it is versus the GFS. I'll switch it over so you can see. That's the European that's in front of you, and there's the GFS, which is just beyond ridiculous. So I'm going to stay with the European's idea, if only because of the fact that it just continues to remain the most consistent, unless the GFS suddenly has picked up on something that the European will then focus on later today. But for the time being, I really tend to discount it. The European seems to me to make much more sense given what we're dealing with and what's going on. One last look here. I didn't really give a good look to the Canadian model last night. I usually think that the Canadian is probably the least reliable of all the models, and I look at it, but I'm not crazy about it. It just tends to be sometimes out in left field with certain things. But here it has a surface low that comes up just offshore. Canadian typically is always warmer. It's got some kind of other low that comes down with the upper support that's further west into the Great Lakes. So that kind of complicates things with regards to snow or lack thereof. But I'm going to just discount this for now because, as I said, this model, the Canadian, tends to be highly unreliable in my view. Someone had asked me about temperatures. They'd like to see some temperatures. So you know what? We'll go real close up so you can see what the temperature profile is with regards to the GFS model. The European temperatures are not readily available or publicly available for me to show you, but I'll just back it up and we'll take you through time. So now this is, excuse me, this is for this afternoon when we'll be in the 30s. By Friday morning, teens and low 20s. You can see how the 30s go all the way down to the Carolinas. Then we start to moderate tomorrow. Temperatures should be in the 30s to near 40. And temperatures Friday night don't really go anywhere. They actually rise a little bit as we go into Saturday morning. And by Saturday afternoon, the 50s poke their noses all the way up into the Hudson Valley. And 60 isn't even that far away. Wouldn't be surprised to see some 60-degree temperatures Saturday afternoon across southern New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania. Then we go into Sunday morning where it chills off a bit, and it doesn't warm up nearly as much on Sunday because you have that colder air that's coming down from the north. And you can see Monday morning the freezing line running across northwest New Jersey and into southernmost Connecticut. So I'm thinking if the European is right for Sunday night and Monday with this next little wave that goes by, you might get a stripe of snow in northeastern PA, northwest New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, say north of Route 84, and then also into Connecticut. And it gets into the 40s on Monday. Then you can see some of this colder air tries to bleed down Monday night into Tuesday. And then we're kind of close. Temperatures are fairly close, not much out of the 30s as we go into Wednesday into Thursday. And of course, if you're dealing with a more dynamic weather system, you're going to wind up with colder air in some places. So let's just see how this all plays out later today with the next run of the European. I'm going to bet that it's just going to remain consistent and maybe just start moving a little left or a little right. So it's going to make some differences in terms of what it shows for snowfall possibilities for the middle of next week. Also, just want to mention real quick, coastal flooding is going to be an issue. If the European is right, there could be some serious coastal flooding along the New Jersey shore and for Long Island because we are going into a full moon now on the 22nd. So it's going to be just coming off the full moon and tides are going to be abnormally high to begin with for the middle of next week. So have a good day. Stay warm. Temperatures today not much out of the low to mid 30s.